the acting secretary. So after the meeting, I started to walk out the door, and here he came. Now, I will not exaggerate. His hair was down to here.
Oh my God.
He had this big Fu Manchu mustache. He had beads all over him. I mean, I thought the 60s had ended, not with him. And he has this book in his hand, and with the very common use of a very common word that we use sometimes in profanity. And he asked me if I had one of these books. And why didn't I have one of these books? He scared the hell out of me. And this hippie keeps charging for me. And he says, "You got $5?" I said, "God, yes, I got that." So I reached in my pocket, I gave him the $5, and he gave me the big book. Then he immediately took it back from me, opened it up, and signed it. And with his phone number. And I had my first resentment in Alcoholics Anonymous because I knew he didn't write that book. And he was autographing. So I left there and thought, thank God I'll never see him again. How little did I know. If you would have told me that night that this guy was going to be a brother of mine, that I would care about him more than any man I know, I'd have said, you have lost it completely. Because besides, I was better than him. You see, I lived in a one-room apartment in San Francisco. Although he told me he lived on a boat on the water in Puerto Madera. And I went, ooh. So one day I said, I'd like to see your houseboat. So I went to see his houseboat. I found out before I went there that 3 guys had lived on that houseboat, 3 drinkers. One had died from the cause, and 2 more remained. So I went down, and there was a boardwalk about this wide. And he'd lived there while he was drinking as well. And the boardwalk went this way. And I thought, how did this guy ever get across this thing coming over? So I went down to the boat on the water. The boat on the water was more like in the water. The front room was sunken a little bit, there was water coming in. And you had to have sea legs. And so I thought, well, now I'm really superior to this guy. My apartment's dry, I'm good. Trying to think of events. Oh, and then we had a lady in this fellowship named Jenna that we all loved. And so I forget how it all, but Jenna says, "Come on, we're going." And I said, "Where are we going?" She said, "We're going to TK's mother's funeral." And I said, "Really?" She said, "Get in the car." So we got in the car, we went down to the funeral of TK's mom, and that's when I met his family for the first time. Went to the reception, and they looked like pretty normal people to have a guy like this. But and then I discovered that his parents were mute, deaf mutes, and that Tom was an expert at signing, and there was some depth here that I hadn't recognized. I became a little less bitter in him, I think. And anyway, so our story went. I didn't want to forget any of these episodes. Then we have a meeting, an AA meeting on California Street. It's birthday night. Someone forgets to bring the cake. So they send Mr. Wonderful out here to get the cake. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard Tom sponsor, his former sponsor, he's got another Dick Farr, I guess. But Dick would tell a story about they asked him to bring it, and he ran his finger through it, and what he was going to have it back. I just wonder if TK was thinking that when he went out to get the cake and brought it back and said, "This is the best cake they're ever going to have." It was a rum cake. Just so you know, he's not always there. And people went up to the counter to get it and took the bite and was going. It didn't go very well. We were at Vaughn and I were walking through the mall one day, Northgate, when it was an open mall, and here Tom walks around the corner with this gorgeous blonde, who I had seen in meetings. And her name was Sue. And I said, I wonder what she's doing with him. So I said, "Gee, maybe I had to say something to Sue." Because let me tell you what he did to me, and I'll tell you. So, but what that turned out to be was a wonderful thing, with a wonderful lady that we all loved, and a little more than that. So I had gotten sober when the bank had sent me down to Tennessee, and I had hired a gal down there, and she was running this project for me, and the bank sent her out for a little vacation in California. I'm now sober, and so we're dating a little bit, and we stayed at the Holiday Inn in Terra Linda, and some of the guys came over, including this one, from the group. So I go up to the room to do something, and when I come back down, my wife's sitting by the pool kind of shaking her head. And I said, "What's wrong?" She said, "He told me I had to get out of town while there's still time." I said, "You're kidding." She says, "No, he told you." He says, "Yeah, that you needed to get away while you could." So I went to our sponsor, and I said, "Mike, you know what he said? He told Yvonne to get out of town." Mike said, "Well, you know, maybe he's got a point." And he might have to. Then he said, "Well, remember, some are sicker than others, Jack." Right away, "Oh yeah, I'm better than you." Well, the theme here is, for 38 years, almost 39 years, I've been trying to catch up to this guy, and I've never come close. Never come close. I've always wanted what he has, and I've never gotten it yet, you know. And so I finally figured out, I'll quit trying to be like TK, he's already taken.
Right.
I'll just be me.
Right.
On a Christmas time, TK, Sue wasn't feeling well, they took her to the hospital, and she passed away very quickly with leukemia. And her children and Tom, and the pain was powerful. And I watched him walk through it. We had a service for Sue, and Tom asked me if I would kind of MC it, and people got up and spoke about it. And I watched Tom through that whole thing. And I listened to him for the weeks preceding and after that. He never whined or moaned about his pain. You could see it in his face. You could hear it in his voice a little bit. But he walked tall, okay, with the kids, and in memory of Sue. Sue had, I guess, a little predilection for something. When she was well, she mentioned to Tom, because as you, many of you know, Sue suffered with him for a long, long time. And she said, "You know, if something should happen to me, you should see Judy. She's a good friend, and she would be helpful." Well, Sue saw something, because eventually that's what Tom did. And here, Judy and her family, and Tom and his family, and all of their friends who were sitting here today watching the result of 12 steps of tolerance and forgiveness. Newcomers. Tom always has a newcomer with him. No matter what, you know, no matter where we went to a convention, they asked Tom and I to speak up, went up to Carson City. And we went up there, and I thought, well, maybe he's got a newcomer with him right by his side, as always. He had a trailer in his backyard for newcomers. I mean, when someone was sick or ill in Alcoholics Anonymous, you almost had to tell Tom not to come, because he would be at that hospital. He would be at that deathbed. He was loyal to the degree. These are things that Judy commented on that would describe Tom, and she knows and loves him, that I know about. Adventuresome. Now, I didn't know until I saw these pictures up here that clever with makeup. Traveling the high seas in years, winning every year the best decorated boat. This is when he was drunk out on the bay, right? Best decorated boat. He was the one decorated. But that was Tom. Talkative. Ask him about the 11th step. You'll hear him. Loyal to a fault. When his friends are sick, he will visit them every day while they're in the hospital. Taking his friends to the airport, putting people up in his trailer, going where needed. Sympathetic, not so much. He likes to let the pain be the teacher, that's true. Inflexible, go ahead and tell him why your traffic infractions are permissible. See what you get out of that one. Yeah, go ahead, just try to tell him your version of how the program works for you, in your version. Organized, keeps the house clean constantly, much to the dismay of Judy, who has a high tolerance for chaos. Now that is exactly what I am the Judy in my house, and this is the Tom. Yeah. I had an event, we had an event December of '08, in which we lost almost all of our money to Madoff. And I was destroyed. My wife, and this isn't about me, but this is my emotion. And the reason I'm telling you this is what Tom said. And it was a very hard thing for me, for my ego, to lose the money. And you know, I've lost a son, and that is a terrible blow to your soul. But when someone takes your toys, it's a terrible blow to your ego. And I was a failure, and my life was over. And it wasn't fair to her. For God's sake, she didn't deserve this. So I went down to Marin and I talked to Tom. I said, Tom, it's just not right. It's not right for Yvonne. And he looked at me and said, oh, Yvonne doesn't have a God? Think about that. You know, you talk about moments that jump out at you. I said, of course she does. You know, what makes me think that I'm the hero and I have to be, you know, it brought me right back to where I should be. You know, an alcoholic without assets. But that was the typical thing of Tom, and so many of you know that the appropriate time, the appropriate words will come, the sacrifice will come, the silence will come. He doesn't need to be heard a lot. Just watch what he does. So I met him when he was 36, and I was 45. And the only thing I've ever been able to get over on him is that I'm old. So now, you know you're getting old when you stop lying about your age and bragging about it. So I'm 84, and this poor guy's only 75. Now, we found out that today that the future attractions. Tom and I have shared the podium on 2 or 3 occasions at the CHIP meeting in San Rafael. One guy leads, kind of chop up the other guy, then the other guy speaks. So we've been asked to have a reprise on the 15th of December. So Tom and I are going to share down there, and I'm not sure what's going to happen, but I will be getting at last a chip that he's already received. Oh, Sue. Tom was like, I don't know, sober a long time, 15, 18, I don't know. And his birthday was Valentine's Day, February the 14th. That's his 88th birthday. Sue got out the calendar and said, Tom, you got sober on the 15th. Now, for a guy that is so exacting about honesty, I couldn't resist it. I said, you mean you've been lying all these years about your birthday? And he said, well, I didn't mean to. I said, but you were. So those are about the most uncomplimentary things I can say about Tom. There's a Broadway show in the 50s called Bells Are Ringing, and from it there was a song called Just in Time. Just in time, I found you. Okay. I took the words to that and changed them a little, Tom. And so they go like this: just in time, Tom found us just in time. Before he came, his time was running low. He was lost. The losing dice were tossed. His bridges all were crossed. Nowhere to go. But now he's here, and now he knows just where he's going. No more doubt or fear. He found a way. He found AA. And God came just in time. Tom found him just in time and changed his desperate life that lonely day. Happy birthday. Oh, the thing that's important. People confuse us. This is really important. They would go and say, come up to me and say, we heard you speak last Tuesday night. You were terrific. I said, last Tuesday night? I said, yeah. I said, you think I'm TK? He said, yeah. I said, no, Jim. And the same thing was happening to him. This was pretty common. It's my 80th birthday. I'm in London on a business trip. I open my suitcase. At the top of the suitcase is the sweatshirt. He says, I'm just Jack, not T. I said, how the hell did this get about? They're in collusion. She packed it into myself. So I've kept this, and I worn it one night when we spoke. Everybody, we were speaking at the big book, and everybody wondered why I was sweating so much. I had this under the coat, so I took my tie and everything off. The other one is when he razzes me about the age. This is mean to me. It said, first the earth cooled, then there was Jack. And the back said, and then God said, TK, thou shalt have more time than Jack. And so it came to pass. Now, you might like to have these someday, but you're not going to get it.